Welcome to War Room, the official podcast of the U.S. Army War College online journal, graciously supported by the Army War College Foundation. Please join the conversation at warroom.armywarcollege.edu. We hope you enjoy the program.
Make sure not to miss a single podcast and subscribe to A Better Peace, the War Room podcast, at iTunes, Google Play, or your favorite subscription service. The views expressed in this presentation are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect those of the U.S. Army War College, U.S. Army, or Department of Defense.
Welcome to War Room, Millspouse Edition, Their Mission, Our Story, a limited-run series on a better peace that addresses the issues that military families face while they support their soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, Guardians, and Coasties. My name is Lynda. I'm a Navy wife with the survival skills to raise 2 children, move 7 times, and thrive during multiple deployments, and somehow still find time to volunteer. My co-host navigating these stories with me is Faith. Faith is an Army wife who works outside the home as a doula and gives her time away as a perpetual, unprofessional volunteer. We know this isn't War Room's normal fare, but we're confident that the topics featured will highlight our unique military culture. Expect the conversations to be honest, the stories to be impactful, and the resources to help the family's mission.
Hello and welcome. This is Faith Bomar with the Millspouse Edition.
And I'm Lynda Lind. Welcome to our story.
We are your co-hosts for this special series.
Today's topic is transitioning students with exceptional needs. Moving can be overwhelming and challenging for all of us, but especially for our children with exceptional needs. And a lot more planning ahead is beneficial to help with the smoothest possible transition to a new school.
Today we are joined by Danielle Foote. Danielle is a proud Army brat, the wife of an active duty soldier, a mother of 2 teenage girls, and a professional educator. She has experienced the opportunities and challenges of educating military children from the perspective of child, parent, and teacher. Her oldest daughter has attended over 8 schools, and her youngest has attended 6. Danielle holds a bachelor's degree in speech pathology and a master's degree in reading and is a certified reading specialist. She holds over 10 years of special education teaching experience across numerous grade levels in fostering a love of learning in not only her own children, but ours as well. We're so fortunate to have her with us. Welcome, Danielle.
Oh, thanks. Appreciate the warm welcome and glad to be here.
All right. Is it safe to say that we can all relate to the overwhelming feelings that so often follow once PCS orders are in hand? It can be a challenging time for our entire family, but especially, like Lynda said in the beginning, the children with exceptional needs. Can you share your thoughts on why being prepared for a new school is especially important?
Absolutely. First, I would like to start off by saying, take a deep breath, a big, deep one, and just believe in yourself. Parenting is awesome, but it is a climb. Transitions to change can be exciting, but bring their own bag of worries and stress. Be confident that you know your child best and are his biggest advocate. Your receiving school will be beyond grateful for your involvement and any information that you can provide them, as this helps to ensure they can successfully meet your child's needs. The time and energy you invest in preparing for the transition is crucial, as it increases the likelihood for that positive school experience each time we move.
Absolutely. I agree with you. We have this. Personally, we have dealt with moving children with IEPs ever since we've had children in school. But can you explain what IEP means?
Absolutely. So, an IEP is an individualized education plan, and it is a federally mandated plan that has to fall under certain guidelines and regulations.
Okay.
And it's set in place for kiddos who cannot, let's say, make growth in education, like advances in their education, without that specialized direct instruction, usually like in a small group setting or with specialized supports.
Okay. Like, for example, my daughter received extra time when taking a test. It was just as simple as
Exactly.
that, but when that
Hmm.
was placed in her education plan, it allowed her to succeed and
Hmm.
achieve an understanding of the lesson plan and have a better grade in the end because she just had a little more time to read through the directions and read through. So those have been instrumental in our life. But
Faith, let me interrupt
go
you really
ahead.
quick and tell you too, just piggybacking on that. So there's also 504 plans that are also important to consider while, if you have a child that has a 504 plan when you are PCSing. And just with you talking about that personal experience with your daughter, sometimes those 504s are really there for just accommodations
Mhm.
to be able to give kids, those supports where they can still make that growth inside the general ed classroom without the additional, I'll say, pull out supports.
So, what are some helpful suggestions before we leave our current location that we can do to prepare for the move ahead?
That is a great question. And I think such a huge thing to be able to put in your toolbox are some of these things that I've collected along the way. As soon as you have that RFO, that request for orders in hand, which is a celebration in itself, right?
True.
Um, Yeah, start networking and spread that word. Start researching your new area and the schools. One great tool I've found beneficial is through MSEC, the Military Child Education Coalition. They have I'll call it a program called School Quest, and it actually has a great program for getting kids even with special needs on the right track and making sure that the schools that they are looking at fit the bill, we'll say.
Mhm.
I'd also contact EFMP and let them know that your family is PCSing, as well as your primary care manager, therapy and therapy providers, if you have any.
Okay, can you tell me
Uh,
what EFMP stands for in case?
yeah, absolutely. It's Exceptional Family Members Program. And sometimes I got to be honest here and say that sometimes, people are just like cringe if they've heard of it because maybe they had a bad experience. But truly, that program is fantastic when it comes to ensuring that your future assignments are going to be able to provide the supports and needs for your family and especially your child.
It absolutely, I
Um,
believe, is just kind of an umbrella protective program of
Absolutely.
uh, families and children.
Hmm. Right. And this was new to me. They actually have an EFMP and me resource that's phenomenal. It has a plethora of great helpful information, and again, that's just they're there to support you to make sure that you can tie up any loose ends and that records are going to be updated, and it's truly worth your while to check that out.
Part of the success of having an EFMP office on post has been that when we have transitioned to a new duty station and gone in, there are meetups with other families on post that are also
Hmm.
enrolled in EFMP. And if you don't have the resource that you were looking for initially, oftentimes you're going to find that through conversation of another parent who may have been at the duty station longer or has previously been on a post that you're going to be transitioning to. So those meetups can be instrumental in finding resources.
Oh, absolutely. I could not agree more. I mean, that networking, I mean, hey, mamas and even Papa Bears are awesome resources for us. I mean, I know I've treasured the the ideas and feedback that they've been able to provide me from their experiences at certain schools around the world.
Yeah.
I also want to say too, another great resource is that school liaison officer. Um,
We touched on that when we spoke with Michelle Sumter as well on the education podcast. So tell me what your experience is with that.
Well, they do, one of their roles is to know and understand the special education services that they have in their area. So when you contact them, they are already very astute on the maybe the special ed directors, all those contacts that you need to have in your pocket for when you're wanting to reach out to those schools before you leave. So they're really great at making those
I
connections.
have found that they're kind of phone directory in the form of a person. They really have all the phone numbers of the people. So you call and tell them what you're needing. They usually have the
Yes.
phone number to get to the person to answer what you're needing. If they don't know what the answer
Yes.
themselves, they're, a great phone directory, which I'm sure is not in their job description. But can you share with us some ways in which parents can support their new school? How do we advocate not only for our kids, but also in the school?
Absolutely. Absolutely. First of all, I would like to say that it's really important to kind of set the tone at home. Moving, especially for kids that, that have exceptional needs, like routines and structure, predictability, those are all things that all kids need, but especially kids that just have those special needs need that even more. So I really can't stress enough the importance of communicating with your kiddos at home and making it exciting. This is going to be a great adventure for our family. And through researching about their new school, that kind of almost gives them a little sense of security and knowing what's to come. I also think ensuring that we have things set up for ourselves, like all our medical records are straight. We've got a current IEP, current evals, all of those papers that are so important to like kind of, I'll say, giving a snapshot of what our kiddo needs and their awesomeness, and being able to hand carry that to your next school is priceless.
In the magical
And I would
binder,
do.
the PCSing binder that we all carry, that
I was
we'll keep referring
yes.
to in every podcast, I think.
Yes. I can't stress enough the importance of having a student portfolio or binder. That's probably the greatest gift you could give your child and yourself. One, yourself, because I've had testing documents and evaluation reports that I'm like, I know I put that in that red folder. Shoot, I can't find it now. And so I've come up with, even for our own family, I've got the red binder, and it's all my kids, just really important documents. It's a great way to capture information about your child, as well as provide an easy way to document all your information all in one spot. Every child is unique. They all have their own strengths and weaknesses, things they like and dislike. And parents and educators alike, should strive to know each child. Through everyday interactions, a child's teacher develops a rapport with your child that provides a glimpse as to who they are. And this information is important and should be documented. So let your teacher know that your family will be PCSing. I'm sure it's going to break his or her heart. But ask them to write a letter or an email stating things they love about your student, things that work or things that don't work, as far as their learning, or even just, playing on the playground.
That is
I
incredible
remember.
advice. That is
Oh,
incredible advice.
thanks.
In all the times that we have moved and gone from one um, IEP instructor to another IEP instructor, I have not asked the previous one to write anything about my child. It's always the questionnaire that we get at the beginning of the
Mm-hmm.
year and the registration packet, right, that I rely on. But what
Right.
a sound piece of advice to ask, hey, you've worked with my child for this many years or this many months, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, right, unfortunately, you've worked with my child with this
Right.
amount of time. Can you write a letter to their next, special needs instructor and of your experience? And I will, pass that to them themselves. That's a wonderful bit of advice.
Well, thanks, Faith. I remember I had an awesome parent. I love. She was phenomenal. She's the one that actually gave me this idea. I remember she shared with me her child's favorite color, his favorite superhero character, and a few triggers that upset him. And it was incredibly helpful for me to know that information, because I was able to ensure a strong, comforting start to his school year by incorporating those things I already knew that he loved. And we developed a strong bond and trust, I would say almost 5 times faster, because I knew a little bit about him, on the sly.
Absolutely. No, I
Yeah.
wish I had done that 20 years ago to my mother-in-law. She would have Should have asked her for a letter. Things.
And I would add that to the portfolio. So it's, those are in there. And I think too, it really, when you walk in to that interview with, your new teacher, and you've got all that organized, it just sets off a really good tone with that teacher. It's so important. I think even as an educator, I always try to tell parents, you are just as crucial to this learning as I am, and your child is too. It's like a triad, and we all got to be together on the same page. So, by giving them a little bit of tips, I think it's empowering for everybody.
Yeah. This all sounds like things in the other education podcast. We talked about scanning in all of those documents that are important, as far as your birth certificate and any test scores and things like that. These things need to go in that scanned file that you save wherever as
Yeah.
well, so that you have access to them wherever you need them.
Organization being so key when we PCS, but the paperwork sometimes not being the priority right away. Like, I want to make sure that they, you know, pack all of the things in the pantry that are closed because technically they can. But when I go to
Right.
find my child's most up to date IEP, I know it's in the to be filed pile, right? So that's the key
Yes.
of a smooth transition for all of our students, but definitely the ones where you need to take extra care because there's going to be meetings initially, right? So you relocate to your new duty station, and those IEP meetings should happen soon after the school year starts. And walking in with your student relocation portfolio, man, I'm gonna look like such a good mom, you guys. I'm gonna look I'm gonna look so put together. I'm real excited about that bit of advice.
Oh, I'm so glad. Well, and nothing makes me feel worse for a mama when she walks in, and because you're already having to start over again, and it's a climb. So if you can have that binder set, and even like information on specific medical procedures, like your asthma plan, your seizure plan,
Mhm.
all those kind of things also are in that binder. That's eligibility and eval summaries. Even maybe notes that you've shared with your in the past, like maybe there's been some problems, and you guys have found solutions through an email chain, and it's just it not only you don't need to share all that with your teachers necessarily, your new school, but just to have that for your own memory. Because I don't know about you guys, but I know my mom brain sometimes wins, and I forget things all the time. So it's just nice to be able to put your brain in that binder and not
Yeah,
have to think about it again.
Yes, yes.
absolutely. Speaking of parents, can you share with us any suggestions you have for places parents might go to find support? This is not always easy on us.
So military one source is a great tool to explore when it comes to just finding knowledge, and because we know knowledge is power, and it definitely can make us feel better on a day where we're overwhelmed by options or decisions or challenges. Another one that I find for parents is the Parent Center Hub, and that is another great website that has a ton of um, military focused tools and articles to be able to explore. And another one that sounds kind of trivial, but even getting on social media, and there's a lot of great parent groups out there. Getting involved in the PTA, wherever, whatever new word
Mhm.
your school is using to whatever
Mhm.
acronym that we love to use. But I really would suggest plugging in because to those parent networks and groups, and just kind of being willing to be vulnerable, and even talking with your teacher. They might have a great uh, a, a suggestion on somebody that they can link you up with, because I feel like when you got a battle buddy, whether it's with as moms, dads, it definitely makes it a whole lot easier.
I think it's nice that you touched on the word vulnerability because this is all heart heavy stuff sometimes. It can be, right? It can be a little bit triggering. when we first started
Definitely.
out in making the decision to get an IEP for a child that was struggling, that was emotional, right? And it felt very vulnerable. And those first few meetings can be somewhat intimidating to go in because you have the school counselor, you have the principal, you have the speech pathologist, you've got the special needs instructor, and you're sitting there going, I just want my kid not to struggle. We just need to figure out how to smoothly transition this new diagnosis. We just need to, there's all of these factors that come into play that make uh, for a heightened emotional state for a lot of people, and for me, when I'll absolutely, put that out there. And information is power, but having compassionate, like-minded families around you that have gone through the same thing and can speak to
Hmm.
the similar experiences is so valuable, so incredible. And then instructors and people like yourself who come in to support and know and know what they're talking about. I'm so grateful for you, Danielle.
Oh, Faith, but I have to tell you, first, thanks for sharing that, and I can really relate to you on as a parent, just that almost that initial, hey, we got a problem, Houston, and you're like, what? It takes your breath away, and when I'm in an IEP meeting, especially not as mom but as
Yeah.
teacher, because I've been there both ways, but it's I think a lot of times we forget as educators, it's a lot of that is a lot of jargon, a lot of professional jargon when they start reading the IP, and you're like, procedural safeguards, what? Like we, least restrictive environment, what? And I try really hard to put it in just a very compassionate, loving way of mom and dad, you've done nothing wrong. And your kiddo's going to be great because that's why we have this plan. We're
Yeah.
making this plan together. I keep hitting that with parents
Hmm.
because if you don't agree with something, you have every right to say, wait, I don't know if we need that, or can we add this? Or I think we need to
I
know
think
that
that's learned on the parent side, though, as well. It's learned
it
to be able
is
to speak
right.
up and then ask, hey, I don't understand that term. Everyone else in the room seems to. We need to break that down so I understand what that means, because it means something most likely very simple. There's just a fancy name for it.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's not like, oh, well, I'm not smart. No, you do know this. You just don't know you know it. And once you explain, you're like, oh, okay, I got that. I get that.
Yeah, we
Uh,
Sometimes we forget that we are our child's best
in the
advocate,
moment for
and all we
sure.
have to
Yeah.
absolutely.
do is say, "Can you explain that to me?" And
Hmm.
that's all we have to do in order to advocate for
Right.
our child.
And I can remember feeling like, well, I don't want to be that mom. I don't want to be that.
Yeah.
Well, your child is, Linda, like you said, your child is counting on you to advocate, and your school truly does want you to. I mean, you know them best, and so hold that tight. Just know, and with the attitude of we are all on the same team. Sometimes we might not feel that way because, and I know I've probably have been guilty of this too. I've got 14 other kids on my caseload, and I'm taking care of everybody, but I meant to call you today and I forgot. So if you ever have or I ran out of time, but if you ever have a question or you can call an IEP meeting anytime. It's not just once a year. Um, and remember that too. If something's not working and your child's going home and sharing that they're struggling, um, definitely reach out to your school and talk about what's going on.
I have found success with including my child in one of the IEP meetings to explain exactly what the services are going to be going forward. Or even sitting down with my child afterwards and telling them, hey, had a meeting today regarding your services at school. This is what to expect. And do you know this instructor? Do you know this new teacher? Do you know the name of Mr. or Mrs. So and so that's going to be helping
Mhm.
you with speech or going to be helping you with math or reading or whatever it is. So if they know the name of the person that's going to be helping them, part of that transition from going from school to school has been helpful for our family, I know.
I l I would say I love that, Faith. I think that is so important to make that dialogue with your child. It really does teach them to self-advocate as
Mhm.
well, because eventually what our goal is that they learn how to advocate, and it all the pieces come together, and we can eventually graduate from that IEP. And you're helping do that by sitting them down and ensuring that they understand what they're supposed to be receiving as far as accommodations and modifications, and at the same time you're also checking to make sure, like, it's happening,
Yes, absolutely.
that
We've done that. We've
Yes.
come across where when they transition from elementary, where you've got your one or two teachers, right, to the junior high setting, where now she had 7 instructors. And so sending out, and I just sent out a mass email quarter into the year and said, how are you implementing my daughter's IEP in your classroom setting on a daily basis? Thank you so much, Faith Bomar. And
I
then
love
waited
it.
for those emails to roll in and then checked with my child that that was happening, because that's, advocating, 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 but in the simplest of ways sometimes.
Right. And again, like, I'm going to kind of beat the drum on this, but sometimes parents won't want to do that because they think, oh, I don't want to be that parent, I don't want to sound like, and I cannot stress enough, be that person, because really, especially in that middle school, high school setting, uh, you very rarely get a whole lot from parents. And then I think teachers crave it. I mean, they really do, like, ooh, Faith, I like this lady, like, she's invested in her child, like,
Now
and
you're
it
just
really
flattering
does
for
kind
no
of highlight
reason.
that kiddo.
I already like you, Danielle.
Ah, I think that really is important, though. So good for you for doing that, and I hope that just having people hear your story and the things that you guys are doing, on your walk, will resonate with them in their heart, and they'll do it too.
Well, and it's not just for those
Yeah.
students who need a little extra help either, right? That as there are also the IEPs for the gifted program as well. For you want to make sure that your
Right,
student is
exactly.
being challenged, um, so that they can
Hmm.
make those leaps
And
and
even those kids
bounds.
that are double, yes, and they have those, call it double gifted, where maybe they have a learning disability, but at the same time they're also, needing that challenge and being in those classes that are under the umbrella of
Hmm.
gifted and talented. And those
Right.
are, to me, absolutely fascinating kiddos. They all are, but to be double gifted is, I like a good challenge. Yeah.
So, Danielle, what are some resources you have found to be most helpful for parents that have additional questions regarding the transition of exceptional children?
Uh, Great last question, Linda. I think I've got about four that I really find to be great resources. I've mentioned some of them earlier, but I definitely want to highlight them again. The MSEC, the Military Child Education Coalition, has phenomenal resources on their website. They have podcasts, webinars, free resources. I mean, it's just a plethora of info, really helpful, beneficial stuff for you, to add to your toolbox. I also, the Military Interstate Children's Compact Commission, and that's mic3.net. That that's basically is a website that breaks down the eligibility per state. That is a frustrating thing, and we didn't really hit on that too much during our chat, but I'm going to go ahead and put a
Yeah,
plug in
fill
real
us in
quick
now
for
then.
that. Yeah, it's, when you move and you have an IEP and everything's great, and you're in, let's say, Kansas, and then it's time to move and you go to North Carolina. A lot of times we hold our breath thinking, are they going to get the same services? Will they accept the IEP? And the answer is, it depends on the state. Yes, but don't expect it to look
Hmm.
exactly the same every time.
Okay.
And that's tough. I mean,
Hmm.
sometimes, because we love our kids and we want them to be successful. So that website, that Military Interstate Children's Compact Commission, just kind of lays out like what each state, their eligibility requirements are. But again, I say all that with not to make anybody panic, or because I've taught in North Carolina all the way to Alaska and in between, and I've never seen a child with an IEP come to a district I've taught at, and the district has rejected their IEP. It's more of, well, we don't, they might not get that aid one-on-one. They might have an aid two children to one aid due to their regulation. So anyway, just to kind of have that resource in your pocket if you want that. But another one I did mention was the EFMP and Me. And that is a great resource, as well as the Parent Center Hub. I think that all of those websites just give us so much helpful information on transitioning, resources to be able to help if, you're having a problem, or you need to have just information on how to find special services or something like that.
Before we close, did we touch everything you want to touch on,
I
Danielle?
think
Is
so.
there anything that we didn't ask you that you feel strongly we need to say?
Part of what you said about transitioning from state to state resonates, because oftentimes I think it mirrors the branches, right? So all of our military branches oftentimes have the same resource, they just call it something different. So within an
Right.
IEP for my child, I was asking about a service, and just because they didn't understand the term that I was using didn't mean that the school didn't offer that service. It just meant they called it something different.
That is so true. And then sometimes I think that when we don't realize that it's just a communication thing, a vocabulary thing, that can cause some hiccups with with the handoff, with I'll say old school to parent to new school, and it could, especially when you get emotions in
Mhm.
there, things can get a little bit tricky. Um, and that's where I always say why it's so important to talk to your school and make those relationships with your case
Mhm.
manager, and that way you can get to where you're saying, where you can discover, oh, you do offer that, but it's just
There was a
you call
We
it
do, we
different.
absolutely. There was a
Yeah.
large
Mhm.
leap going from a DoDEA, Department of Defense school, to a state public school. The
Yes.
They
Yeah.
offer the same things, they call them totally different, and all of the paperwork had to be changed as well.
Oh,
So much of that
yes.
responsibility was not on me, except to oversee that it had been done, and that it was something that we could put into what I'm now going to call student relocation portfolio and transition to the next place, because sometimes we're going to go
Hmm.
then back into, with our next move, back into another DoD school, and so we can make sure that that transition is as smooth as possible.
Right. Well, and it's also important to mention every state likes their own, I'm going to call it IEP writer. So even as a teacher, when I move, I go to a different school district and teach there, I have to learn a new
Yeah.
program. And the DOTS
Yeah.
program is way different than even all the other ones. I'll call them the state
Yes,
ones.
absolutely.
But and that's just protocol. Like if you go to when you move and they say you have to, we have to. They take your initial move-in
Hmm.
IEP, and then that state has X amount of days to accept it and rewrite it, and I'm going to call it their language, their
Correct.
program. And so it does look different, and it's funny because every time it never fails. Even me as an educator, I look at it like I don't like this form as well as the state X's, but then it grows on you, and you end up like, oh no, this really is way
Yeah.
better than what I was using before.
Yeah.
So, and I think parents feel the same, end up feeling the same way. You get cozy with what you're used to looking at, right?
And then
Yeah,
it
Yeah.
changes on you.
you make friends, and then
Yes.
you get an referral for orders, RFO, and you're exactly. Friends, like,
And you
yes,
start all over
exactly.
again. Yeah.
Well, so as today's
Yeah.
episode comes to a close, we would like to thank Danielle once again for joining us today.
Oh, you guys, I'm so glad that I got to share this time with you and talk about my favorite thing, which is kiddos. And you guys, it was so much fun. Thanks for the opportunity.
We'd like to thank all of our listeners out there as well. Please send us your comments on this podcast or others, and we'd love to hear your suggestions or ideas for future topics. We're always interested in hearing from you. If you've not already done so, I hope you'll subscribe to War Room via our website, which will put updates and content directly in your inbox. And you can also subscribe to A Better Peace on the podcatcher of your choice. And if you would, rate and review the podcast. That will certainly help other people find us as well. We look forward to having you all again with us soon. And until next time, from the War Room,
I'm Faith Bomar with Their Mission.
and I'm Lynda Lind. This has been Our Story.
And that concludes our program. Thank you for listening. The views expressed in this podcast reflect those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views, policies, or positions of the U.S. Army or the Department of Defense. Let us know what you think. Provide us your feedback, comments, or suggestions through our webpage at warroom.armywarcollege.edu. And have a great day.